I don't see you somehow as part of the Hollywood scene. Would you tend to be invited to Irving Lazar's Oscar party, that kind of thing? Or?
I get invited to to various Hollywood parties and Oscar parties and so forth. Mm-hmm. I'm a member of the Academy.
Yeah.
But
I guess I don't see you hanging out in the social scene that much.
I really don't. I have a ranch in Texas, and that's really where I spend most of my time when I'm not working. And plus I have a Kick Drugs Foundation in Houston. I spend a lot of time with my foundation. So
does that have a full title, Kick Drugs Out of America? Or
Kick Drugs Out of America Foundation is the actual title, which means that I work with inner city kids in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade levels, and we teach the martial arts as part of the physical education curriculum in these particular schools. I have 680 kids in my program, and these are, as a karate teacher for years, I taught a lot of kids, and I saw what the martial arts could do for them. I had kids in my classes who couldn't communicate with kids their age, or low self-esteem, over-aggressive kids, whatever the case may be. And through the martial arts, we were able to help many of these kids, most of them. Yeah. But these were kids whose parents could afford to come to my school. How about the millions of kids that couldn't afford it? Yeah. So that's what this program is helping work with these kids whose parents can't afford the program.
How do you select them? Because there must be an awful lot more that want to come in than you can handle.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Each school, each school that we're teaching at, of course, the average is about 800 kids. We can only handle 150 per school. And so the teachers and the principal picks the kids. And it's all voluntary. They have to have their parents' permission. And what we found out is that out of all the kids in the school, that 90% of them want to be in our program. And that's the hard part, is picking the right, the 150 out of, say, 600, 650 kids to be in the program. That's the hardest part of the whole thing. What's happening, of course, is, in the martial arts, you instill discipline and respect. And what is happening with these kids that we're teaching, you see that carrying over into their other classes, their English, math, history classes. Now they're responding to their teachers as yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, rather than yeah, no, and all this stuff here. Yeah. So it's carrying over. Interesting story. About 6 weeks ago, I went to one of the schools, which is the toughest school in Houston, Texas. And I went there for a belt promotion. And so we awarded the kids their belt that they tested for. And a mother had walked 2 miles with 2 infant children, 11-month and a 2-year-old child, to see her son get his gold belt. And how I even knew about this is after it was over, and it was in the evening, we were all leaving, and one of my instructors was driving down the street and saw her walking down the street with the 2 infants and the boy, and he picked them up and took them home. But what's happening is that the average turnout to a PTO meeting is 5% of the parents. What we're getting is 90% of the parents showing up for our events.
Great. It's really wonderful that you're doing that.
Well, you got to get the parents and the kids working together, and that's what's lacking in our society today, is parents and kids doing things together.
There is some crummy martial arts teaching too, isn't there? I mean, I know that any goon seems to feel he can put up a sign that says karate and put up a
there are
busting a board.
Yeah, there are the Joe Piscopos, who the guy that Joe plays in this movie. Right. There are instructors like him who want go with a macho attitude and instill that in their students. That's unfortunate, but that is the exception to the case, though. In most, throughout our martial arts community throughout the country, those guys are exceptions to the rule.
Without presuming to psychoanalyze you, there are those who do. Do you feel that this whole life that you have now would be all utterly different if you had a father who had been there as a role model? Do you see any of this as compensation for that, or would you rather I'd shut up?
No, I don't know, Dick. To be truthful, I've often wondered if I hadn't been sent to Korea, if I hadn't studied the martial arts over there.
Yeah, you were an MP.
And I came back and started teaching. Which direction my life would have turned, I'm not really sure. But I think I believe in fate. I believe things happen for a reason. And I think there was a reason, because I dreamed of this as a child. My dream, interesting enough, when I was a small child, we were very poor in Oklahoma, so I couldn't buy toys. So I used to use my mother's clothespins. I had the big ones and the little ones. I used to use them to do battle, to be fighting the bad guy. And always the small clothespins were the good guys. The big ones were the bad guys. But amazingly, as I used to fight, I used to do kicks and all this stuff here and jump down and kick the bad guys. And then all of a sudden...
All with clothespins?
With clothespins.
Yeah.
And then as I become an adult, and now I'm doing it with the martial arts on the film and as a karate fighter and all that. So it's interesting how dreaming something as a child doing all this. Then all of a sudden, that dream becomes a reality in my life as a martial artist.
But you weren't a martial artist when you were an MP in Korean War, right?
No, I wasn't in Korea. I went to Korea in 1960.
Where were you an MP?
Yeah, Osan Air Base in Korea. What had actually happened, I was going to be a police officer. And when I went into the military out of high school, I thought, well, I'll go into police work, military police, and then, get training as in the police area and study correspondence and all that. And that was my goal, to go through 4 years as military police, get out and go right into the LAPD, eventually going into the FBI. That was my goal. And then, when I was in Korea, I thought, well, here's a great opportunity to learn a martial art. So when I become a police officer, I'll be able to handle situations on the street.
Right.
But again, the martial arts set me in a new direction. I became a karate martial arts teacher, and I gave up the idea of being a police officer. And then I became a karate teacher.
I don't know why I had this image of the Chuck Norris that was nothing like the Chuck Norris we know today, being pushed around as an MP and finally secretly studying karate.
You know what? I think what it was, probably the story. It was in my book, as a matter of fact, when I was an MP. Before I went to Korea, I was stationed at this base, and I was an MP. I'm 18 years old. And there was a ruckus going on at the NCO club. And I was sitting down there to quell the ruckus. So I go in there. Here's this big old sergeant, drunk. Big guy, like 6'6". I'm 5'10". I walk up to the sergeant, and I had 10 hours of martial art training in boot camp. I walk up to the sergeant, and I go, all right, Sarge, cool it. Next thing I remember was flying across the room, man. This guy grabbed me, and I was like a missile flying across the room. And I hit the wall, and I slid down the wall, and he's coming at me now. He's coming to finish off the job, and I didn't know what the devil I was going to do. I thought I was going to get the...
Would getting out of there maybe have been a good idea?
I would if I could have, but I couldn't get out of there. And luckily, my NCO came in and stopped it. But I realized then that I wasn't prepared to deal with a crisis situation at that time. But then I went to Korea, and I took up the training to prepare myself.
If he'd killed you, there'd have been a lot of blank celluloid in the world now.
I'll tell you. I'd have been mad at him if he'd done that. I'd have been real upset if he'd have killed me.
In the movies, there's genuine violence, and there's acted violence and choreographed violence, and obviously sometimes really, truly, pathetically fakey-looking violence. But a lot of effort goes into getting it right and rehearsing it, but people still get hurt.
Well, you try to keep it to a minimum. You rehearse and you rehearse, trying to get the fight scenes down without anyone getting hurt. Because, see, my real concern is with stuntmen. Stuntmen's livelihood is dependent on being able to work from movie to movie. And so I take extra precautions not to hurt any of my stuntmen, because, their livelihood is, they don't have any compensation. They get hurt, they go on unemployment. So, so I really take extra precautions not to hurt them.
What usually goes wrong when a stuntman is hurt? Is there any general thing like some human error forgetting to check a safety belt? Or...
it's hard to say. I mean, it could be anything. When they do a stunt that doesn't involve a fight, a car stunt or whatever, then it's up to them to make preparations to avoid being hurt. But a fight scene where, like, I'm fighting a stuntman, then he's relying on me to be able to know the distance of my kick. And of course, I've been doing it for so many years, I can throw a kick within a fraction of an inch without making contact.
I believe you were too old for Vietnam, but your brother you lost a brother in Vietnam.
Right.
Do you know the circumstances of how he died and all, or was
he was on a patrol.
Yeah.
And he was point man on the patrol, and he saw an ambush being set up by the Viet Cong, and he saw them getting ready to fire on his patrol, and he yelled back to warn them to duck. And when he did, well, then they focused their artillery on him.
Had he not done that, he might well have survived, but or they'd all have been wiped out.
Yeah, he won. He got a.
Oh Lord! And you got that firsthand from one of his.
From one of the men in the patrol. A couple of them came to the funeral, and so they told us what happened.
How do they decide who gets to be point man? Who has to be point man?
Well, generally the sergeant will decide, or someone will volunteer. Yeah. In this particular case, he volunteered for point man.
God. I haven't lost anybody close to me in a war, although somewhat distant people have. But would it make it any easier in this case had we not lost that bloody war, or does that make any difference when you?
You know, in
Does
the
that
early
make it a
part
little
of the
bitterer?
Vietnam War, you know, I was behind it. I'm one of these ultra patriotic type guys, but you know, reflecting back, and not even with losing Willie, but just the you know, going back and realizing what kind of a war it was. It was a war of monetary gains rather than a war of principle. Even though they say that is the reason, too many people became very rich from the Vietnam War. And I think it was a mistake we made. I think it was a war that could not be won. And we just have to avoid those in the future, wars that don't serve a strong enough purpose. They're just saying, well, we were there to avoid communism. But, you know, these people here, all they're concerned about is eating from day to day, not whether it's a democratic or communistic society, but where am I going to get my next meal? That's what these people are concerned with. And so we have to be careful about that in the future.
I have a dream. We rent Madison Square Garden. And say yes now, and then I'll tell you what it is.
Yes.
Okay. Now I got to get the other guy to say yes. We get not Keith Carradine. David. And who's going to win? It's going to be a fair, free fight. Anything you want.
Well, you know, David.
We'll sell out.
Well, David is a friend of mine. You know, I did a movie with David called Lone Wolf McQuade.
Yeah.
And you know, and he did the Kung Fu series and all that. And David's a great guy. So I don't think renting out Madison Square Garden would have much of a draw between David and I. If you pulled out some of the other martial artists, Steven Seagal or Jean-Claude Van Damme, the current guys today that are martial arts.
David's slowed a little, has he? And his accuracy might be a tad off.
David knows the martial arts, but his profession was in the martial arts.
He was an actor.
David's an actor who has done some martial arts throughout his life, but he's not what you consider a professional martial artist.
How good is Seagal?
Truthfully, I don't know. I don't know Steven. I've only met him once. Jean-Claude's pretty good.
You can't tell just from seeing his movie, martial arts.
See, most of Seagal's movies, his action is done close up. You really can't see. Everything is real quick cuts, so you don't get a chance to really see exactly what he's doing. Where with Van Damme, trained with me for 1.5 years when he came over from Brussels. So I know him quite well. Wow. And he's a good martial artist.
I wonder who a champion martial artist would be. A big guy with a kind of Middle European accent. I ran into a bookstore once, and I went over to say hello to him, and he said, "Get the hell away from me, I'm going to kill you."
He said that to you?
Yeah.
A martial artist?
Uh-huh. And a young student was with him who was very embarrassed and said, "Gee, I'm sorry." I said, "Your friend's a real charmer,
actor or what?
Not an actor, but a martial artist world champion, tall with a sort of somewhat Russian-ish accent."
I don't know. Are you sure he's a world champion? I don't think he is.
I don't know.
Because I know all the world champions. I'll
find out and let you know.
I know every one of them, and I don't know of one that would have that attitude. I mean, I know them all because I'm in the kickboxing world.
Maybe he's a former world champion.
No, not even a former. He may be a wannabe.
I'm sorry I brought this up. I'll figure it out.
He's a wannabe. Because the wannabes are the ones with the attitude.
Or maybe wannabe again or something. Who knows?
But he's a wannabe that will never be.
Yeah.
See, because guys with that attitude just don't make it.
Have you had much Aikido study?
Oh, yeah. I've studied Aikido for several years.
Kendo, do you do a lot of them to a degree? I mean, do you try to do a little of each one? Huh?
Was it Steven Seagal that told you that?
What?
Steven Seagal, did he tell you to get away from him?
No. It wasn't Seagal. Wait a minute. You know, he looks like he might. I have never met him, but he looks like he could be annoyed on some days. He has slight potential.
Just 7 days a week.
Has he ever crunched your instep or anything? Or?
No. They wouldn't dare.
That menacing, really rotten kind of guy image that he projects is
carries over.
Largely acting, is it, or not? No. I see what you're trying to say.
It carries over in his whole life.
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, that's too bad.
For a martial artist,
I suspected that.
Yeah, for a martial artist, it kind of surprises me too.
He was crappy to a guy I know once, and I just wondered. I didn't want to say it.
He carries a gun with him everywhere he goes.
He carries what?
He has a gun on him.
No kidding.
Everywhere he goes.
Where does he carry it?
Huh? On his hip, on his leg.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Gee.